unable to hear you, Raj.
Raj, we still can't hear you.
How's that? Can everyone hear me?
Yeah, that's
Much
better.
Classic. All right, I'm Raj Heck. We're going to get started as people are still joining. We have some other presenters. So I want to be respectful of their time. We're doing MCM3, illicit discharge and detection and elimination today. As a reminder, please stay muted with your video off. If you have any questions, you can post it to the chat, or you can press the little hand sign there at the top. For those who haven't attended any of our meetings yet, we are doing outreach and Q&A sessions through October 20 of 2022, every third Thursday of the month from 9 to 11 a.m. Each session, we are covering a specific section of the permit. So far, we've done MS4 101, MCM5 post-construction stormwater management, TMDLs, and MCM6 pollution prevention and good housekeeping. Next month, we'll be doing MCM4. And if you have any questions you'd like beforehand, if you could send those in to us to our email. I will post in the chat too, so you can copy and paste that. And if you'd like to see the schedule of our outreach sessions, you can visit this website for the schedule. Our goal with these outreach sessions is to assist any of the MS4s and their representatives with understanding the permit requirements and interpretations of those requirements and our expectations in terms of compliance. And another goal here is to highlight the differences between the expired 2013 permit and our recently reissued 2020 permit. Any of the new requirements today are going to be highlighted in red, and you'll have 12 months to get in compliance with those new requirements. And that'll be 12 months for the date that is on your final notice of coverage. Again, if while we're preparing these outreach sessions, if you have any questions beforehand, it'd be greatly appreciated if you send it to those emails. And if you have any interest in presenting with us, if you have anything interesting to add to one of our outreach sessions, please reach out to us. Today we have Ryan Granlund from Duluth who will be presenting on one of the illicit discharges that they had up in Duluth. And then as a program update, the 2021 annual reports are available that went out in the Gov delivery. If you need any help accessing your annual report, you can reach out to your MS4 contact and we will gladly help you out. And then, yeah, for the schedule today, right after this, we'll be doing a Mentimeter survey with Carly. We'll have a financial assistance update from Bill Dunn and Sydney Osborne. I'll go over the MCM3 requirements, and we'll have a presentation from Ryan from Duluth. We'll do a Q&A, and we'll do another Mentimeter survey at the end. So I think I will hand it off to Carly for our Mentimeter survey.
All right, thanks, Raj. So for those of you that have joined us in the other sessions, we are going to be using Mentimeter this morning. I posted the link in the chat here. Sorry about that. If you could just click on that, it should take you right to the survey. And our first question we have here this morning is, what organization are you representing today? And again, all the answers are anonymous. We're just using this to help gauge who's all joining us today. All right, I think I'm gonna wrap it up here in another second. All right, next question I have this morning, maybe it lets me. So next question, how long have you been working with the MS4 permit? Great. Glad to see everyone's finding the survey this morning. All right. The next question we have is going to relate to a new permit requirement. There's no right or wrong answer. What is the status of your pet waste regulatory mechanism or mechanisms to meet the 2020 MS4 permit requirements? This is just to help us gauge who's kind of already meeting it or who might need more assistance in meeting it. We do have a model pet waste ordinance, which I'm sure Raj will touch on during his presentation, that is available in the Minnesota Stormwater Manual. All right, great. Well, looks like we have folks in all kind of the different areas of where they're at with the regulatory mechanism process. Next question is, what is the status of your salt storage regulatory mechanism or mechanisms to meet the 2020 MS4 permit? Again, this is a newer permit requirement, and we're just using this to gauge to see where folks are at in this process. Right, so looks like we got everybody kind of in different spots here as well, which is totally fine. The last question I have this morning is, have you identified priority areas with a higher likelihood of illicit discharge? Okay, I'll give this another second here. All right, and it looks like we got folks kind of all across the board here as well. All right, Raj, I will turn it back over to you. Thanks everyone for answering the questions this morning.
Thank you, Carly. And I will immediately turn it over to Bill Dunn and Sydney Osborne for a financial assistance update. I believe I saw Sydney was on.
Hi, everyone. I'll start out first. Bill Dunn, I'm the State Revolving Fund Coordinator, and I've been here for the last couple of months. I've been pitching the next round, the 2023 Project Priority List and Intended Use and PSIG grants. I've brought that up. We've got a little over 2 weeks for this cycle. The first Friday in March is our annual deadline, so please reach out with ideas to me, and I'll get you in touch with our stormwater staff. And we are having some interest, but again, I want to remind you, if you got a waste load allocation and you're an MS4, PSIG can offer you 80% funding for BMPs up to $7 million. So keep that in mind. But today we're going to focus in on a sub-account of the SRF. It's the Clean Water Partnership Loan Program, run by the PCA, and Cindy Osborne is here today, and I'll hand it over to you, Cindy.
Okay, Bill's B Squad program, the Clean Water Partnership Loan. I did put together a presentation. I don't know if you guys want me to share it or I can just buzz through it. I don't want to spend a lot of time wasting it with you guys about background, but it's kind of up to you. Do you want me to share a PowerPoint or would you prefer I just yak at you?
Sure.
Okay. See if I can pull this off. Come on. And get out of the way. Jeepers. All right, so we have the Clean Water Partnership Loan Program that's a spinoff of the non-point source stream of funding for addressing any type of problem that comes up through a non-point source. So you guys are probably scratching your head saying, why am I talking to you guys, being that you are a point source? But we do have the option of helping out in some of those areas where perhaps PSIG or some of the public funding streams aren't appropriate. So basically our program purpose is to get non-point source pollution addressed. We have low interest financing options. Actually, it's 0% interest right now to improve surface water and groundwater in Minnesota. It's available to local government units. So basically folks that can pledge their income behind it. I believe that the fancy phrase is their full faith and credit. But essentially it's cities, counties, townships, folks that can actually create a funding stream to pay it back. That is my short version of it. We can't lend directly to individuals, but we can to the local governments. It is a revolving fund. So as the money comes back in, we can loan it out. It will act as a grant match. That may not be something that's applicable to you guys, but just in case, it is considered local funds. And we've distributed well over $60 million since the program began in the early 90s. How it works is we can lend to the folks for a 3 to 4 year period of implementation. It always starts out with 3 years. And we can extend it to a 4th year if necessary. So depending on how you're going to address a problem. So today we're talking about those private lateral pipes, and that's how my program can help you guys out. So we can't help you with your street pipes. We can't help you with the public infrastructure, but we can help finance folks that have a lateral pipe from their home to the street that is probably not fundable through other traditional public funding mechanisms. So you would have 3 to 4 years to actually implement your project if you took out a loan. So that would include the actual replacement of the pipe. It can include the testing, the smoke testing to see if there is infiltration in that private lateral. It can help you with the outreach. It can help you with the administration of the program. So it's a very flexible program that you would have 3 to 4 years to address. And then when it goes into that repayment period, you have 10 years. Generally, it's a semi-annual payment in December and in June. And there's no penalty if you want to pay it off early. It's 0% interest throughout the life of the loan, both the project and the repayment period. And it is a very quick and easy mechanism to get some money to lend. So how it works is if you were to take on a project such as a lateral pipe, you can create your program any way you want. So if the LGU felt like it was a need that the community should absorb, they could take out the loan, they could fix the laterals, they could do the outreach, they could do all of that, and then pay it back out of their regular tax or fee coffers. If the community felt like that is not the responsibility of the community, but rather it should be on the homeowner, they can use this as a second tier loan, so they can lend it to the homeowner. If they do lend to the homeowner, the city has the capability of charging up to 1.5% interest on the homeowner to defray those costs. I mean, obviously there's time, there's issues that you have to do various things. You can do it through an interest rate like that. You can pass on the 0% interest to that homeowner, or you can charge a loan origination fee or an application fee to kind of weed out anybody that might be just kind of messing around and wasting time. So however it works best, or some combination of the above. You can make it income-based, so it's really a blank slate. One of the handy things is so that you're not in the business of having to bill a homeowner or fool around with having annual invoices or some separate funding, you can go ahead and tack these onto their property taxes. So then when they pay their taxes, it's like any other easement, it comes in. That offers some protection to the county or city. In theory, we can't avoid taxes. Obviously, we all know people do default, but it appears to be a very low rate. But in theory, if you have a little extra protection from a homeowner not holding up their end of the bargain. So with the Clean Water Partnership loans, as it pertains to the cities, as it pertains to urban areas, folks can use this for just about any type of non-point source runoff. So what would that look like in a city? It would be the urban BMPs, like your rain gardens, your private lateral upgrades, stormwater projects, like if you were going to do some porous pavement, if you needed to do some type of BMP on public lands. And then, of course, for anybody that might be interested in some of the counties, this is also available for things like agricultural BMPs, forestry, feedlot fixes, SSTS. But today we're focusing on what is applicable to more urban areas. Another thing that has come up that we've been flirting with too is that this might be a good opportunity for funding some of the exchanges. And it's not a part of your program that I'm super familiar with, but if you were to exchange, like say a county with an MS4 and they wanted to work with their soil and water conservation district to get some BMPs on cropland to help offset phosphorus loading in their wastewater treatment, that is probably something that we can help with too, to help fund those agricultural BMPs or other activities. One of the beautiful things about the CWP loan program too is you do not have to wait until a certain time of the year. So your possibilities are very, very open. You can come in and apply at any time. We will help you because it is an open RFP. It's not competitive. We're not scoring your project against somebody else's project. If you have questions, if you don't understand the application, if it gives you a headache, you can pick up the phone and call us and we can help you walk through it. You don't have to wait for that window of time when this application period is open. So if something comes up, if you have an opportunity, you can take it. And we are pretty darn quick. So if you put your application in, generally I have an answer for you guys in about 2 weeks. Then it is a matter of going through the loan application, or I'm sorry, the loan execution process. And our financial counterpart here at the PCA is Kurt Suler. And he is the guy that would walk you through all of that. It's a matter of getting it executed by your board or whoever has the authority to do that. It does require a general obligation note. Unfortunately, that's one of those things that's in the rule and statutes, so we haven't been able to wiggle around it. But essentially, that's a credit check to say that you guys have the money to pay it back. So it does go through a bond counsel, but that is an eligible expense to use loan funds for. So it's not depleting your coffers by paying attorney's fees or bond counsel fees. You can include that into your loan. So some of the things that is nice about this project is that we have that public-private conflict, right? So if you are working on your main lines in the street, you can't fund often, I shouldn't say always, but often those funds can't be applied to a private homeowner. There's that line that doesn't like to get crossed. So this opportunity can give you a funding stream to address that. The timing is good because you guys can pick your time of when you're interested and when you want to jump in. You're not waiting for, that 2-week period where you have to scramble to try and write a specific grant application. And it is a pretty affordable funding stream. Granted, everybody likes grants, but this is still better than a sharp stick to your eye, at least at 0%. And this will also allow you to do BMPs on public land. So if you do have parks or municipal golf courses or whatnot, and you want to do something to address stormwater runoff, it's an opportunity to use that. Just to throw it out, wellhead protection, that might be something that would interest anybody that is doing some swaps or some exchanges. Most of those are in more rural areas, but that is something that we have been talking about. I'm just going to leave the slide in here, not waste a lot of your time on it. Chloride reductions. This is also something that probably ties directly into your waste load allocations. We're seeing more and more issues with chloride in our surface waters. So if y'all have ideas that you want to try to implement for chloride, whether it's swapping out water softeners, whether it's applying less salt to your roadways, if it's getting equipment, that's something else I can help you with too. So again, I just want to reiterate that this is a very flexible program. You can completely make like Gumby and make it fit your needs. If you need assistance with that, Kurt and I are here to help you with that. We can walk you through it. We can give you ideas. We can hook you up with other local government units to swap ideas, or if somebody is doing it already, we can help you connect. And instead of continuing through a bunch of slides that walk you through the funding process, I am going to toss it back to you guys and offer you an opportunity to answer or to ask any questions that you guys might have. I am not a huge fan of PowerPoints and having you stare at a screen. So I think I'm more useful if I can answer any questions y'all might have.
There's a question in the chat. Can this fund street sweepers and or Vector trucks?
Absolutely. So street sweepers, if it's an improvement, so if you're already sweeping streets, you may need to show that it's a better equipment for whatever reason. For example, we have done a snowplow blade. Obviously, I think most communities in Minnesota probably have used a snowplow blade once or twice in the past. This one had a reason for being better. It was made to clean better. It was made to reduce salt application, and there was a little bit of research to back that up. So for example, we just might have to explain that this one has a vacuum and the other one doesn't, or this one's more efficient. Yes, Mr. Klein, you can use this to fund plow trucks with updating salt licking equipment. So that includes any type of temperature gauges, any type of application, brining equipment, fancy blades, you name it, we can fund it. We did this with Thompson Township. So to toss that out there, that was a small township up here in northern Minnesota. I'm calling you guys from Duluth today. They were able to upgrade some snow removal equipment. Oh, and then down in southwestern Minnesota, we helped fund a street sweeper for this. Oh my goodness, I'm drawing a blank on the name of the city. And we're working with the city of Lakefield right now to help swap out some water softeners. Rain gardens, everybody's favorite. Yes, we can help fund rain gardens. One of the things that we can do specifically too for a permitted activity is any type of outreach and education. So if you had a training that you wanted to hold, or a promotional activity, maybe getting the equivalent would be, of course, in agricultural world is getting folks together to talk about soil health. But however that might look, if you wanted to talk about shoreline restorations, if you have in urban areas where your population is popping up around a lake or a stream, or a river, any of that kind of stuff is good. Stream bank stabilization, lake shore stabilizations, restorations.
Hey, so I'm going to jump in here. Cindy's just presented. She's got a funding stream with 0% interest. She's got a turnaround period of a couple of weeks. The program's open year round. They're funding things now that they didn't even think about 10 years ago. And she started the presentation saying she likes new ideas. So, like she said, it's not a grant, it's a loan, but it could be really useful. You can, as a city, you can get this funding source. You got 3 years to implement the program. You got, what was it, 7 years to pay it back.
10 smaller payments.
Yep. You can figure out some way to do a secondary loan like she talked about. So so there's a lot of opportunity, and the funds are there. It's not a competitive thing. It's about someone that has a good idea and is ready to do the good idea. And that good idea has to improve water quality. Department of Ag has a similar program. It's called the Ag BMP program, and they fund in cities too. But this one is really set up for cities to come in. You can partner as cities too, secondary loans to groups that want to do something. So I guess, once again, this is another opportunity that we're really looking to partner, help you find the money, do the project now and pay it off over the coming years. You get the benefit today. And I guess I guess anybody else have any questions for Cindy? Your contact information's right there. And I think we're almost out of airtime. I'm pretty sure we are. Last call for questions. Thanks for your time.
Thank you
Give us
so
a
much.
call.
All right, thank you, Bill and Sydney. And we'll move on to MCM3, illicit discharge. Let's get the right screen. Back in. All right. Here we are. All right, so today we're covering MCM3, illicit discharge detection and elimination. This section of the permit requires permittees to develop, implement, and enforce a program to detect and eliminate illicit discharges. An illicit discharge is any discharge that is not composed entirely of stormwater. There are exceptions that are listed in 3.2 of the permit. That includes things such as landscape irrigation, dechlorinated pool water. We just went over that with one of the permittees. Street wash water, and any discharges from firefighting activities. Those are all authorized non-stormwater discharges. So MCM3 consists of these segments. This is only just my personal way to organize it.
Hey,
You have
Raj,
yeah.
we do not see a presentation.
Oh, man. All right. Let me double check that this works. Can everyone see it now?
Yes.
Ah, great. So, well, I'll just go back so you guys can see the last slide, which was just the 18.2 requiring you to have a program to detect and eliminate illicit discharges. And then this is how I, at least personally, define the MCM. We'll have our storm sewer system map, our regulatory mechanisms and enforcement response procedures, the ERPs, your actual illicit discharge detection, which is like your inspections and your spill response, training, and your annual assessment. And then again, anything that is new to the permit, the 2020 permit, will be listed in red, and you'll have 12 months from your permit issuance date to get in compliance with those. The first one's really simple. You need a storm sewer system map, as required also in section 14. Those are going to be your pipes that are 12 inches or greater in diameter, flow directions, your outfalls, structural stormwater BMTs, and receiving waters. You're required to develop, implement, and enforce a regulatory mechanism that prohibits non-stormwater discharges to the MS4. That is to the extent allowable under state or local law. And again, this does not involve authorized stormwater discharges that are listed in 3.2. Your regulatory mechanisms can consist of contract language, ordinances, permits, standards, written policies, operational plans, legal agreements, and any other mechanism that is enforceable. That's the critical piece on that, is that your mechanism is enforceable. New to the permit, is you need a regulatory mechanism that requires owners or custodians of pets to remove and dispose of feces on permittees owned land. I'm going to post a link to our toolkit, which will have a model ordinance in there for pet waste. There's also going to be other documents, guidance documents, inspection checklists, just a lot of documents to help you get into compliance with MCM 3. Also new to the permit is salt storage regulatory mechanism. You're required to have a mechanism that requires proper salt storage at commercial, institutional, and non-NPDES permitted industrial facilities. This regulatory mechanism has to include that your salt storage is covered or indoors. It's located on an impervious surface, and you must implement practices to reduce exposure when transferring material. This includes stuff like street sweeping, any kind of containment, diversions. And here is a link to our salt storage model ordinance. That will be under 3.2 DRSR bulk storage facility regulations, which I'll put in there too, just to make sure. 18.14, permittees must maintain written enforcement response procedures, or ERPs, to compel compliance with the regulatory mechanisms. This will now include a description and guidelines for your enforcement tools, timeframes to complete corrective actions, and a name or position title of responsible persons conducting the enforcement. So a little added specificity to the new permit. 18.17 requires the permittee to document any enforcement conducted pursuant to the ERPs just listed, including verbal warnings. This must include the name of the person responsible, dates and locations of the observed violations, description of the violations, corrective actions, referrals to other regulatory organizations, and the dates the violations are resolved. Under the illicit discharge detection, the permittees must incorporate illicit discharge detection in all inspections and maintenance activities conducted in 29.9, 21.10, and 21.11. If you're unfamiliar with those requirements, those are your inspections of structural stormwater BMPs each calendar year, and your single inspection of all ponds and outfalls through the permit cycle. And the permittee must conduct illicit discharge detections during dry weather conditions. These are periods of 72 hours or more of no precipitation, as feasible. So not new, but a little added specificity to this requirement is that your priority areas now must be written or mapped. And you must, at a minimum, evaluate your priority areas for land use associated with businesses or industrial activities, areas where illicit discharges have been identified in the past, and areas where there's a large storage of materials that could result in illicit discharges. And 18.11 requires you, if you determine there are priority areas, requires you to do additional inspections of those areas. You must document the following involved with illicit discharge: the dates and locations of your inspections conducted in accordance with 18.7 and 18.11, which were the last two slides. Reports of alleged illicit discharges and the dates of the reports and any follow-up actions. Dates of discovery, outfalls or other areas where illicit discharges have been discovered. The sources of those illicit discharges, if you are able to, and that includes a description of the responsible party and any actions taken by the permittee, including the dates of those actions. The permittee must implement written procedures for investigating, locating, and eliminating sources of illicit discharges. That's 18.12. The added specificity here is, at a minimum, the written procedures must include a time frame in which the permittee will investigate a reported illicit discharge, the tools of the permittee to investigate and locate an illicit discharge, such as cameras, water samples, dye testing, cleanup methods available to the permittee, and the name, position, title, or name or position title of the responsible party for investigating, locating, and eliminating that illicit discharge. And then not new to the permit is B, use of visual inspections to detect and track the source of an illicit discharge. The permittee must also implement written procedures for responding to spills, including emergency response procedures to prevent the spills from entering your MS4. It's 18.13. This has to include notification to the duty officer pursuant of 1115.061. If you are unfamiliar with that, it states that you must immediately notify the agency of any discharge, accidental or otherwise, of any substance that could result in pollution to the waters of the state, excluding petroleum of 5 gallons or less. On to training, 18.8. Permittees must conduct training of all field staff on illicit discharge recognition once a year. So there's going to be 2 components to your training here. Once a year, all field staff in illicit discharge recognition and reporting those illicit discharges for further investigations. Your field staff include, but is not limited to, police, fire department, public works staff, park staff, etc. And your training can consist of videos, in-person presentations, webinars, training documents, emails, and really anything else that you may feel is appropriate for your training. 18.9 requires the permittee to give individuals training that is applicable to their responsibilities as they relate to the IDD program. Individuals include people who are responsible for investigating, locating, eliminating illicit discharges, and any enforcement that comes from that. And those individuals must receive a refresher training every 3 years. So these individuals, if they're solely responsible for enforcement, they would receive training on how to conduct enforcement and would get a refresher every 3 years. Patrick, will come around to your question during our Q&A session. Just don't want you to feel like I'm ignoring you. And then for all that training, just listed in 18.8 and 18.9, you must document general subject matter covered, names and departments of individuals in attendance, and the dates of each event. I believe we have resources in the toolkit. I'll post it one more time here. I'll have to double check in there, but I'm pretty sure there are some documents to help with training. And then 18.18, the permittee must conduct an annual assessment of the IDDE program. This annual assessment is to evaluate the program compliance, the status of achieving measurable requirements, and determining how the program might be improved. Your measurable requirements are activities that must be documented, trainings, inventory, inspections, enforcement. One of those measurable requirements could be responding to illicit discharge reports within 24 hours. You'd assess how well your program did with that. And then this annual assessment must be performed prior to completion of the annual report. And you must document any modifications that you receive or you perform as a result of your annual assessment. Again, we'll come back to your questions in the Q&A. Don't want you to feel ignored. And so now I'm going to turn over the presentation to Ryan from Duluth, who's going to present on one of his illicit discharges that they had up there. And afterwards, we'll do a Q&A, and I believe Ryan agreed to answer any questions you guys have also.
Thanks, Raj. Can everyone hear me fine? Or can you hear me fine, Raj?
Yes,
Yeah,
we
I can hear you.
Thank you. I'm Ryan Granlund. I'm at the City of Duluth. I'm the City Stormwater Program Coordinator. Raj had asked me to do a short presentation of something IDDE related, and I agreed because we actually just did have an event this last summer that was rather unique in the fact that it utilized like all of our resources that we had for IDDE at some point along the way, big or small. So I think, I'm just going to try to show some slides here. They're mostly like GIS, aerial images and whatnot, and kind of try to lay out like a story map in a way, and that's really what this is it's a story about, this particular instance. And, I wanted to show this instance because it was kind of the classic IDDE situation. You got a questionable discharge, try to figure out what it is. It seems like a sewer odor, and just like it was so challenging for us because it was so different. Even though it was kind of a classic example, but let's see if I can try to share my screen here. Are we seeing my slide screen here?
Yes, we can see your slides, Joe.
Thank you, Carly. So, like I said, my name's Ryan Granlund, City of Duluth, work in Public Works and Utilities, and it's a nice view of Duluth in our region, Lake Superior. This kind of instance that we're talking about is over in the eastern end of Duluth, kind of on the hillscape. Let's see if I can talk a little bit about kind of the different resources just broadly that the city has right now. We've got about 4 vectors. We do have a couple TV trucks. We also have a mechanical rotor. We do utilize contractors from time to time that have smaller TV equipment to get into pipes or get into any kind of areas where we can't access with our typical TV trucks. And also we utilize contractors for smoke testing too, where we need it. But we try to do a lot of the stuff ourselves with dye testing. And, we try to do some, when we see it fit, we'll do water quality sampling too, and see if we can get kind of a measurable association to some sort of, potential pollutant, typically like a sanitary sewer overflow. And that's a little bit about what this one is today. And then, of course, we got staff to manage all of this stuff and to perform all these actions. And, this doesn't include actual construction equipment and staff we have to do that to follow up with instances that are publicly owned infrastructure. So this happened on a street, like I said, out in East Duluth. And as I mentioned before, this kind of particular instance really used all of our resources at one point or another. It showed that, we really went down the typical instances first, what we expected it to be, but persistence is key, especially when it's really challenging situations come up, and really engaging with the community is really key, and has been in the past, because those are the folks that live there and know what's typical and is different now. What I mean? You're kind of looking for the source or why some of these things are happening, and never really rule out possible scenarios. So, like I said, gonna be a bunch of GIS images to kind of show kind of a story. Not a lot of words, maybe a lot of me talking. So, if we can see my cursor here, this is a really blown up view of the storm sewer infrastructure in this neighborhood. We're going to be looking kind of in the center of the screen here. We had first gotten a call from a resident at this location that they had a culvert in their backyard that had some questionable smelling discharge coming from it. So like I said, kind of typical. So, we always try to respond to this stuff immediately. We got there that afternoon. It was a later afternoon call. And first thing we noticed is that we didn't have any sort of record of any sort of culvert or storm sewer infrastructure around this home. And, the storm sewer infrastructure is highlighted here in blue on our GIS map, and the green is going to be our sanitary sewer infrastructure. So, there was some questions right off the bat, like, what is this culvert or pipe even here? And, we don't necessarily have record of it. So that's where, it's talking to the neighbors, talking to the people, the community members that live there. And one of the neighbors actually shared this with me, which is really amazing that they had this. But they had a drawing of this pipe that apparently collected water behind their home and drained it underneath their home, underneath the city right away and road, and discharged it back down into their neighbors. So here's the GIS now with this kind of drawn into it to help kind of illustrate really where we were looking at. And I put the contours on here first so folks can kind of understand, and picture, visualize with me as we're going through this, what this neighborhood is like. Like it's on a hill, it's sloping down towards the lake, and these houses are relatively above, and these ones are relatively below. And really, you can see here, there's this hole behind this person's home that this catch basin is in. So all the runoff from their driveway and everything like that is actually running underneath this home and across the right of way, and discharging really in the backyard of the folks below them, which is obviously not an ideal condition. So showing this again, this is the outfall of the pipe now that this resident had called us on, and really had kind of explained to us that this was just started happening. It was pretty new, and that they're intimately involved with what is coming out of this pipe. It's in their backyard. It's in their garden actually. So if you can see here, there's a pretty nice garden. These folks are incredible gardeners, obviously, and this pipe is kind of right in their backyard, and they've really embraced managing the runoff from it, as they're such great gardeners. They put in this massive rain garden in their backyard, and I kind of wanted to include this to show, this is where any water, there's very little runoff, but water that was running through here is collecting in this vegetated rain garden area that they had purposely built for this. But they said something was different this time, and I agreed, that it didn't make sense, and it didn't seem like much at first, but you could see this is the water that's coming out of that pipe, and it's got an odor to it, and it smells of sewer. And we took a sample of it, and after we got the results back, it definitely had elevated levels of fecal coliform in it. So it was, we were fairly positive it was sewer. So we kind of started going down that path of deductive reasoning, like what's next and where could this issue be? Going back to the GIS here, one of the first things we noticed is, we've got a sanitary sewer, public sanitary sewer that crosses it. And we also have a sanitary lateral cleanout right in this folks' backyard, in their garden too. and thinking that maybe there's a sanitary lateral that runs kind of in the vicinity of this red line. So we've got a couple things crossing it. It also like runs underneath somebody's home. So there's a lot of, you know, potential crossing points or points of influence as it comes to sanitary sewer infrastructure that could leak or get into this culvert, the storm sewer. Another thing we noticed is that there was some really recent landscaping work done right in the neighbor's yard. So like kind of putting on the investigator cap, you know, working through the deductive reasoning. What are some things that could be, and let's look at those first. So like I said, this is a neighbor's backyard, very recent. There's barely even grass growing yet. But they obviously did some earthwork in the backyard here. So using some of our tools, right? First thing we're doing, we're just checking to see if this sanitary sewer that crosses is flowing in good condition. And it was, and it's actually PVC pipe. It wasn't built that long ago when we were looking at our records, like 20 years ago. So pretty good condition. Doesn't mean it can't be an issue. So we put some dye in the homes too that like could directly influence it or made the most sense. And started working through that process of like looking and waiting to see if any dye comes out of this pipe. Nothing came out. So, you know, first things like, okay, it's not the most relevant issue, you know, or not the most relevant solution. So start televising the sanitary sewer. Start trying to get TV equipment into the pipe. We'll talk a little bit more about that. And do some more dye testing, like dye test, run more water this time. Try to dye test other fixtures in these homes and additional homes. So we dye tested around here, and we didn't get anything in the culvert still. So we're really still just kind of left scratching our heads. And we did get dye down from these homes in the lower sanitary sewer system down in the street below those. So now we knew for sure that there was something happening with their lateral. Their lateral was crossing here. So we kept kind of focusing to that point. So, you know, like I mentioned before, we'll hire contractors once in a while because our TV equipment can't get into private laterals. But, you know, we had to figure this thing out. So we hired a contractor and we televised this lateral system and found that we actually had a couple of joint connections here. And, you know, they did cross this storm sewer, but they were in really good condition. The lateral is actually in really good condition. And mind you, we've dye tested these homes and we still haven't gotten anything out. So we're really left scratching our heads. So we started doing some more dye testing. You know, could these homes be connected to this lateral too? It turned out they weren't. They're connected in the sanitary sewer system downstream, so not influencing it. And it's like, we have to get our camera up in this outfall, but I wish I had some better pictures of it, but the outfall itself is a 15-inch VCP vitreous clay pipe culvert, very poor condition, really flat, and kind of buried in the ground and in this these folks' backyard. It's really hard to get camera equipment in there, like nearly impossible to get our large camera equipment in there. We tried with some of the smaller TV lateral equipment. It was just plugging up. You couldn't get a good picture. So really trying to find out with our other tools, where could this issue be coming from? So now we're getting somewhere. We're checking some boxes. Again, that deductive reasoning. It's not this sanitary sewer. It's in great condition. We've dyed it now. We've dyed these homes. We've televised its laterals for condition. You know, where can we look next? We gotta do some more work up on top of the hill. So now we're trying to get a camera in the top. And this catch basin isn't just like a standard size catch basin inlet. It's really small. You can't get a TV truck camera in there. So we're again attempting to camera down with the smaller push camera that the contractor has, and we're running into more roadblocks. But we did find some drain tile lines, as I kind of illustrated here in red. So we're thinking, is there something happening on this sanitary sewer up above that might be draining through the ground and getting into here? And let's do some more dye testing. Let's dye test the other houses too. And can we clear out this outfall? Can we get our camera in there? So we're just, like I said, the persistence thing. We got to find out where this questionable water is getting into this pipe. This is taking some time now, mind you, and there's still, it's actively discharging. Luckily, it was very low amounts, and it was being really well contained in this rain garden that these folks have built, but the situation isn't ideal. And, we're trying to get this figured out for them. So now we've gone through, we've dye tested these homes, still no dye. Conditions are good. Condition of this clay pipe or this sanitary sewer is great. It's lined, and we still can't get a camera down in because this pipe is actually collapsing in some sections out in front of these folks' yard, and we're having a really hard time getting past it. And the little bit we can see, we've got nothing. So what else do we have? We can try smoke testing maybe. And so let's get a contractor out here. Luckily, they're able to come out fast and do some smoke testing for us. So we smoke tested the entire sanitary sewer along this street, and we got nothing. No smoke out of the ground, just smoke out of people's stacks. We had a little bit in this folks' basement. After a bunch of work, we found out it was from their footing drains as they're connected to this pipe after we smoke tested the storm sewer itself. But no smoking anywhere, even after testing the storm sewer. So we're just like totally left scratching our heads. So now we're like, we got to get in this pipe. Has to happen. So we actually one called a spot to dig the pipe up to get a camera into it so we could televise the section under the road, because that's really the only piece that we haven't been able to see yet. And like I said, we did a bunch of dye testing, and after we got some smoke in their home here, no issues. And what actually ended up happening is we didn't have to dig this pipe. We took some black iron pipe and we just rammed our camera as hard as we could up the end of this culvert. And it's hard to explain, but we got really lucky and we made it past some blockages. We got our camera in there, and this is kind of what we started to see. So, this is a few feet up the pipe now, probably about 25 feet or so up. And you can see the inside of this culvert's in poor shape. It's old, and that previous plan that the neighbor had given me showed it was built in 1924. And so we were able to start driving up it. And this is really where the rubber met the road, So we drove all the way up from the end with our camera, parked in their yard with our truck, and saw water dripping at the sanitary sewer crossing. So now we're like, we've checked all these boxes, including the sanitary sewer, but we've got water coming in here, and we're just like, where did we go wrong? What did we miss? Because it feels like we certainly have missed something. And this is what I mean by dripping. So this is a picture of that actual location. So this location I have got marked on the map. We're in the storm sewer pipe right now, facing upstream, coming up from the home where the outfall was. And what you can see in this image is actually the sanitary sewer pipe is actually partially embedded within the storm sewer. So to our best estimate, the contractor, when they replaced this sanitary sewer, like I said 20 years ago, with PVC pipe, they didn't know that existing storm sewer crossing between the homes had existed, and when they laid the pipe, the elevations didn't work out, so they notched it and then put some mesh in and made a construction joint, which had then failed. But that still left us like, well, the water's not coming from that sanitary sewer, so where is it coming from? but we knew there was water coming in, and it was a bit more now today because we had just gotten some rain. And so we're like, if we're going to find it, now is we're going to find it. And so what it actually ended up doing is we knew we're facing upstream, like I said, and this water's coming in on the left-hand side. So we just started walking, and we knew it was somewhere in this direction because the water was coming in from here, and it was along the sanitary sewer. So we just started opening up manholes. We started opening up all along Branch Street here, the storm sewer, the sanitary sewer, and walking, and we actually ended up finding in the alley up above, a block and a half, a little over a block over, was a backed up manhole in one of the only lines we had televised to this point. And we found out that later that there was a hole here, and just downstream of there was a blockage caused by flushable wipes. So what was happening is this blockage had kind of happened in this sanitary sewer, and it was backing up, and I can't like stress how just like the series of events all led to themselves here. The blockage was just enough to allow enough water by in this sanitary sewer where we didn't think it was, when we televised this one, where we didn't think it was any issue upstream, but also not enough or not so blocked that it would push out of the cover here and flow onto the street. And there just so happened to be a hole in the side of this clay pipe that the water could exfiltrate out into the soil on. And then it just so happened also that there was a newer storm sewer that ran down the street and a newer sanitary sewer that were both bedded in gravel, or some sort of granular backfill material. And then that gave a relief point for that exfiltrating sewer to flow through the granular backfill over 400 feet to finally hit this, just so happened to be mesh in this culvert, and slowly drip into the backyard of these folks. So, now we're like, not feeling so bad, but we got to fix it, right? Like, we went through all this process, and who would have thought that it was over almost 500 feet away? But now we got to fix it. So we dug a spot repair at that spot, cleared out the line with our Vector equipment, got a construction crew out, one of our construction crews, to patch in some PVC in there temporarily. And then the same thing we did here, because we can't have this mesh open and collecting any kind of utility failures again in the future. So this is a photo of the fix we did up in the alley on this the sanitary sewer. It's just a small section of pipe that was broken. And then here is what we dug down and ended up finding on the cross culvert for the storm. And this is the sanitary sewer. We were able to replace it with a similarly sized, the same size PVC, which is smaller diameter, and get those clearances. But now, looking forward, we're going to have this lined with cured in place pipe liner, and then we're also looking to see if we can actually work with the homeowners and get a project together between the city and the homeowners to replace this entire thing, because it's in poor shape and was the subject of an instance like this. So I'll just leave on a picture of Lake Superior here that I took one morning, but just wanted to kind of show this this kind of series of events that happened, and because it felt unique, at least for us. I mean, it took us a while. It was deductive reasoning, like I said. You think it's going to be something close or nearby or typical, and it just wasn't. So if folks have got questions about it or whatnot, feel free to reach out. I'll drop my email in the chat. So, but otherwise, thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, Ryan. Really appreciate presenting for us.
Absolutely.
Lots of kudos on that story. That was a great story.
Yeah, thanks. You know, we had so many people working on it, and you know, the folks that helped us out there in the neighborhood, they were so great too. Everyone was so understanding, and like, because you know, you're starting to after a couple of days, you're starting to feel a little embarrassed, you know, like you haven't figured it out yet, and you know, everyone's asking, and but like there was cheers in the neighborhood when we finally figured it out, right? everyone was super stoked. And you know, we got really lucky, you know, that it wasn't worse and we were offered the time to be able to try to figure it out. But it was certainly a unique instance, and you know, we all learned a lot. I would say that like if I were to guess, there's probably 40 different people that had worked on it at least an hour at some point along the time. You know what I mean? Whether it be construction staff or tractor operators, TV truck operators, contractors, engineers. It was cool. It was cool.
There's a couple questions for you. How long was the investigation and how many hours total to resolve?
Yeah, I think we more or less spent about 7 days out there. And I would say, well, we put in full days every day, so you know, at least over 40 hours. And that was just, you know, me who was kind of leading it there, but you know, we were talking about all the other people involved too. So over 100 hours, I don't know, you know what I mean? It's pretty crazy. Those are not typical. Normally you can figure it out way sooner than that. It's just a broken lateral or something. But
All right. So I'll move on to the questions for MCM3. Again, thanks for presenting, Ryan. I think that adds a lot of value to the outreach session. So, all right, let's go back up here. So Patrick asks, can field staff include even seasonal workers, lifeguards, camp counselors who are likely not involved with IDDE? If your staff are working in the field where they may discover discharges to your MS4, they would need some level of training. It's really what is practical. So, you know, the training can involve emails or just some kind of information on illicit discharge detection.
But for that question focused on recognition and reporting, I think he's talking about 18.8.
Oh, oh yeah, the once a calendar year. Cole, do you want to speak further on that? It's kind of, I think they're looking at what the cutoff is for field staff.
Yeah, so we, like Raj said, to the extent that you can train those staff, we would like to see them trained. Like Raj mentioned, if they're in the field and they have, you know, the possibility of observing a discharge to your MS4 system, to the extent that you can, you should try and train them. And also, like Raj mentioned, you know, you could have an email list that has some basic information about, you know, this is what illicit discharge is. If you see something, if you see a spill, if you see something going to our storm drain somewhere that doesn't look right, it's not water, it's not storm water. Here's who you should contact to let them know. So it could be a pretty basic information for those staff. But I don't know if I should say this or not, but I you know, personally during audits, I don't usually ask to that level of detail. Like, are you getting to those certain staff? You know, I'm looking for those specific individuals mentioned in the permit. You know, your parks, your public works, your police, your fire department. Those that are generally associated with permanent job duties that are not seasonal. But again, to the extent that you can, yes, you should be training all field staff that are working for your organization.
All right. Training resources, I did post those. Again, that's from our toolkit. I think they're more towards 18.8. It's probably the focus on those documents, but there are training resources in there. Does the MPCA plan to start providing illicit discharge enforcement training you used to offer? I haven't heard anything on that. Dwayne, do you have any information towards that?
No, I'm struggling to recall what Alan is referring to. And Alan, you can unmute and speak up if you want.
Yeah, that's me. I remember taking a class several years ago, and I don't know, maybe I saw another question that maybe it was put up by the U of M, but it had to do with illicit discharge program management. Just wondering, because we've got the requirement that we have to train our enforcement staff or inspection staff, and I'm not really sure how to go about that other than that program or something that we just throw together internally.
I think it's probably more of an internal thing, and Scott Fox, you can chime in if you want, but I think, you know, in terms of enforcement training, this would be making sure that the people that have those responsibilities at the local level are aware of exactly what the ordinance says and what your enforcement response procedures say, and following those to the extent that they can to address any illicit discharges that are discovered.
This is Scott Fox. I'm with Dwayne. Alan. I'm kind of struggling to remember what enforcement illicit discharge enforcement training we offered. I can't recall anything. So, I mean, maybe it was some other training that you went to.
But every municipality is going to have their own unique enforcement response procedures that you know are appropriate for them. And I think the expectation is that you train people that would be doing enforcement on what your unique procedures are and say.
Yeah, I think that goes back to the other question too, is 18.9 is going to be a lot more specific to the procedures that the permittee has, rather than something more broad like general illicit discharge detection.
Yeah, and just to add to that as well, you know, you can check out, you know, the MS4 digital document library. There are some YouTube videos available there if you want to get an idea of, you know, some training components that you might want to include. But they're absolutely right. It should be, you know, somewhat of an internal training tailored to your program. So like what types of tools, cleanup methods you have available for your staff. If you have a code enforcement officer that would be involved in, you know, enforcing, you know, a cleanup or something, they might want to meet with your legal counsel, you know, again, once every 3 years to brush up on what enforcement tools you have available, whether or not those tools are sufficient or not. But you know, we're pretty you know, accepting as far as what could be used for training. Certainly would be great if they're, you know, if the U of M has a training course. If that was, I think someone asked about that. I did Google that quick to see if they had any courses scheduled, and I see they have had some in the past, but I didn't see any, you know, scheduled currently. But yeah, to some level, that training really should be tailored internally at your organization level.
And then, so hopefully that was adequate answer. Maria asked about the U of M training on illicit discharge. I have no idea if the U of M plans to provide that anytime soon.
And I'm aware of that.
Yeah, I did check, and like you said, I didn't see that they're offering it anytime soon. Uh, 18.11 to how often must you do inspections for priority areas? Yeah, so you have your inspections that are each calendar year for your structural stormwater BMPs. And then you have your single inspection of all ponds and outfalls for the permit cycle. And then, so 18, Point 11 just states that you have to do additional inspections of your priority areas on top of that. There's no specific number.
And remember, it's a general permit, which happens to allow maximum flexibility for the regulated community. So we are not prescriptive on how many more or the frequency at which additional inspections must be conducted. But we do expect the municipalities to consider these priority areas and then incorporate what they believe is appropriate for additional inspections. And Cole, you can certainly add to that if you have anything.
Yeah, that's right, Dwayne. We originally, in like a very early version of the draft permit before we issued it, we did have annual inspections of those priority areas, but we did, I know after some feedback from stakeholders, we did go back to the original language in the 2013, which is the additional inspections. So we don't require annually. Like Dwayne said, you should give consideration to those areas, and if it's once per permit term or if it is every year, just make note of that and document those inspections. So if we were to audit you, we would want to see, what is your frequency for those areas, and be able to produce some documentation that you did check on those areas for inspections.
I don't think there's any more questions in the chat. Right. Training. Yeah, it doesn't look like I see any more questions in the chat. If anyone has questions, you can certainly ask.
Is Bill Dunn still on?
I think he was busy with something else. He might have left.
All right, so no opportunity for questions for him.
All right, and then I guess I'll hand it off to Carly again before more people leave, and we can do a little more mentee surveys.
All right. Yeah, 1 second here. I will post the link in the chat again for everybody to access it, but we do just have a couple questions to wrap up today's session. Right. So the first question I have is, what guidance or materials would you suggest be developed and made available by the MPCA related to today's topic? And I did post in the chat the link to the Mentimeter survey. So if you just click on that, it will take you right to it. And then if you want to elaborate further on any of the ideas, feel free to email the MS4 permit program.pca at state.mn.us.
I was going to say, based off the questions, I was sure that the training was going to come in.
Some training materials. All right. I think I'm going to move on to the next question. You can feel free to continue to answer. So our next question is, how helpful was the information provided in this outreach session? All right, give it another second here. All right, I'm going to move on to the next question. Final question for today. How can the MPCA improve future outreach sessions?
yeah, I was really happy that Ryan agreed to share it with us.
Yeah, and again, this is just a little plug. If you have a real world example that you want others to hear about, reach out to us. We're more than happy to coordinate with you to present at these outreach sessions, because I do feel the real world examples are super helpful, and it's always great to hear how they were resolved and all the trials and tribulations to get to the end product of reducing or eliminating or whatever the case may be. But I think with that, I will wrap up the Mentimeter survey. If you have any other comments, feel free to keep submitting, but I will end that there and turn it back over to Raj.
Yeah, thanks for doing that again, Carly. And I do want to point out, Nick did post one of our training videos to the chat. Again, any of the links in the chat will disappear after this, so if you'd like to save them, I would do so now. And we do have training documents in the toolkit, which I posted. There are some of them there. Another big shout out to Ryan for presenting for us. Just think that was very valuable. And thank you for everyone for attending. Next month will be MCM4. I'll just stay on in case anyone's saving anything from the chat.
All right, Raj, I'm going to go ahead and end the meeting. It looks like it's just mostly PCA staff left.
Cool. Sounds
Sounds
good.
good.
See you guys in a few.